Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen across our beloved Kyber Empire. Let me tell you, it's time to wake up! Because you're not just playing a mobile game, you're playing a mobile game with the king of mobile games. God's gift to mobile gaming, Otto T, and one of the first was named the Emperor of the Kyber Empire, and we are gonna give you top 10 cars to take advantage of for the new feature location, the Collapsed Mine. And let me tell you, I'm looking out there inside the Grand Arena Coliseum. Look at all the people excited to see what plays you and your opponents are gonna be making outside on that field, and we're gonna make sure we give you the best intel and tools to dominate your opponents and get to infinite faster, more than ever. Gary, bring him back over. Let's not get him too excited. You know, it's a lot of stress when you have billions upon billions watching you play Marvel Snap. Collapse Mine, featured location for the next little bit. It's gonna be starting up in a few hours here, so we're gonna get this on your radar, and we have a lot of funny tools to keep advantage of that maybe your opponents aren't even thinking of. So Collapse Mine, we got 10 cards. And of course, a bonus meme at the very end for everyone who likes this video. I might squeeze in a bonus meme. You know, I don't know, I'm feeling pretty generous. Collapse Mine, fill this location with rocks, skip a turn to destroy your rocks. So what we got to keep in mind are several key things. One, what cards take advantage of cards being destroyed? That's going to open up a lot of theory crafting possibilities. Two, what cards can take advantage of rocks and actually utilize them to maybe juice up their power and have the rocks win the zone? Three, what can you do to keep the rocks on your opponent's side of the field? And the other part, what can you do to stop your opponent from taking advantage of this Collapsed Mine? One thing we got to keep in mind, I'm going to recommend cards that are going to be kind of all around helpful. You don't want to just build a deck around just the feature location. Yes, you want to keep in mind, have a couple things baked into your deck to be ready for it, but by no means should you just be focusing just on the feature location. That's what all these cards are all about here. So card number one, when you see Destroy, your mind should immediately gravitate over to Death. Death is an obvious first choice right away. It's a 9-cost card. Normally takes a bit of work to get to, but with Collapsed Mine, 4 rocks on one side, 4 rocks on the other, assuming both sides destroy the rocks, she's gonna be a 1-cost card, and it's gonna be very easy to make her a free card. So Yondu, just have Yondu destroy a card from someone's deck, boom. You're playing Death for free that round. So what that means, it's not on the list here. You're probably gonna see a lot of Death, right? Well, what's Death afraid of? Shang-Chi. You're probably gonna wanna take advantage of Shang-Chi. Make sure you have it ready. I am expecting to see lots of Death over the next coming days with this featured location. So Death is number 1 on the list for obvious card to use. However, there's really only 2 ways to get rid of the rocks for the most part. A few others too. Number 2 on the list is gonna be helpful so you don't have to skip out on a turn. Number 2 on the list, we're talking Killmonger. Killmonger is gonna destroy all of those rocks that are in your way, and that's going to be extremely helpful. Rocks in your way, what are you going to do about it? Get rid of them, and that way it still counts towards Death. So if you destroy 8 rocks, boom, you're going to be able to make Death still cheap, but you're not skipping out a turn. Your opponent are probably skipping out on turns. Killmonger doesn't have time for that. Killmonger needs to get plays rolling, and so do you. So I think Killmonger, we're going to see some use as well. You know, it's one of those things where basically I think the way to think about it is Collapsed Mine. If you're skipping out a turn, it's basically a self-applied Killmonger at that point. But you know, sometimes you don't have time to wait. Killmonger is going to speed that process up and make sure you're keeping that power onto the field, so that way you're keeping that momentum and keeping that initiative on your side. But speaking of initiative and skipping out on turns, we really are only talking about destroying cards. Well, let's look at the part about skipping turns, right? You're skipping a turn, but you need to be doing something during that turn. You don't just want to just skip a turn and be like, oh, I guess I'm not doing anything. No. Number 3 on the list, we're going to talk about a few cards, 3 cards in fact, that take advantage of skipping out on turns. Sunspot is going to be number 3 on our list here. Sunspot, we all know, I think it's the most popular 1-cost card in the game. Of course, it's susceptible to Killmonger, but you know, we're going to talk about some things to protect it. Obviously, armor is very good to protect Sunspot. At the end of each turn, gain +1 power for each unspent energy. So if you're skipping out on a turn, you want to make sure that energy that you're not using, it's being put to use. So if it's turn 3, turn 4, boom, you're turning this into a 1/4, 1/5 powered card. Sunspot is a totally fun card. Boy, it's hard to really think of another better 1-cost card out there. I know there's Iceman and stuff like that, but Sunspot is going to be golden. So this is going to be another level. So we can technically combine Death as well as Sunspot. So as you're making Death cheap, you're making Sunspot become more powerful on the field. You see what I'm getting at? A few angles to look at this. But on top of that, this is going to be a bit more out of reach for some folks, but it's going to be a bit easier after January 31st. We got to add She-Hulk to the list. So yeah, cool. We're skipping out on a turn. Sunspot's getting energy, and our Death is becoming cheaper to play. But we want to be able to get some, we want to do more. Let's double dip into this. So She-Hulk, she's going to cost 1 less for each unspent energy last turn. So imagine if we're skipping out on turn 5 and you got all that extra energy and your death is now cheap, it's basically a free card. Imagine being able to play She-Hulk because you didn't spend the energy, Sunspot became more powerful, and then you're going to play Death alongside She-Hulk and maybe even another card because of how cheap She-Hulk and Death is. Obvious candidates right there. Again, skipping out on turns, we need to place as much power onto the field as possible. And you know what? Speaking of power, I feel like we need a little bit more power onto that field. Your opponent needs to feel your pressure. They need to feel that they're up against someone talented and they're up against someone that's worthy of dominating a mobile game. We're going to add Infinaut to the list here. Infinaut, it literally is a card you're supposed to skip out turns. Literally, you got to skip out on a turn to play it. So turn 5, we're skipping out and playing it. Imagine being able to lay down a Death, being able to lay down an Infinaut. Your Sunspot's getting more powerful. Your She-Hulk's becoming even cheaper. Infinaut, I'm expecting to see a lot of use with this Collapse Mind cycle. If you're going to be skipping out a turn, and here's the thing about it. Your opponent might not expect you to drop an Infinaut. They think you're just skipping out on a turn so you can clear the rocks and use the zone. Partially true. You're getting in there because you're about to squeeze this big boy in there and lay down a fat 20 power on those fools. That's the power of Infinaut right there. So those 3 cards are mainly meant to take advantage of the period where you're actually skipping, but you're doing something at the same exact time. So it's not 100% a skip. Next few cards, we have 3 cards on the list in terms of keeping the rocks in the field, but taking advantage of them, making them actually do some work onto the field. So we have a couple of cards in this direction. Now, I don't think I'm going to go down this direction, but some people might like the option. Next 3 cards here. Let's take a look at it. Bring them on in, Gary. Patriot. Your cards with no abilities have +2 power. Well, we know the Collapsed Mind's placing rocks. The rocks are the most talentless thing I've ever seen inside of any game. They have no talent, they have no description, they have no abilities, but that doesn't mean you can't take advantage of them. Patriot's gonna give them +2 power, so if you have 4 rocks, well, 2, 4, 6, 8, that's not all that bad. But maybe we can do even more with it. So as you're using your Patriot deck, which is an all right deck, you're taking advantage of those rocks. You gotta make sure you keep the power, you gotta make sure you keep applying cards, because if you accidentally skip out on turn, those rocks go bye-bye, which is part 1 of the problem. But we got to take it a step further. What's a common thing you run of Patriot? Mystique. Mystique, after you throw down the good old Patriot, copy the ability from Mystique, and all of a sudden, we now have 16 power onto the field. Ooh, doesn't that sound a little bit more scary all of a sudden? And now they're not just rocks, they're rocks that are posing a threat and starting to apply the pressure on your opponents. That's something your opponent might not be too keen about if all of a sudden you have 16 power rocks on the field. But wait! There's more! What if we could do even more to juice up those rocks? Let me present to you Blue Marvel. So it's a traditional deck, but instead of using debris to do the rocks, you got these guys. Blue Marvel is going to add another +1 power ongoing. So you have 8 from Patriot, 8 from Mystique, and now you have another 4. So you're looking at 20 power. And I guess technically, if you want to, in this category, you can maybe even add an Onslaught to maybe double the effects of Patriot, and you can get even more. So the point I'm getting at here, they look like rocks, they're kind of useless, but there are going to be ways to utilize them, take advantage of them, and lay down power. But you got to keep in mind, this is why I'm not too keen on like debris Patriot decks. You got to watch out for Killmonger, and more importantly, if you skip out on a turn, you're going to lose those rocks, all the momentum you built up on. So that's something to really make sure you're keeping your eyes peeled for. But now, we have 2 more on the list before bonus meantime. How can we, 1, keep those rocks over there while you have no rocks? And secondly, how can we, all that stuff we talked about earlier, how can we just ruin all those plays? Let me present to you number 9 on the list. And you're going to have to follow me for a moment. I'm talking armor. Okay, let's think of it this way. It's going to be tough to pull off this play. I get it. But let's say your opponent doesn't skip out on a turn. You did though. The rocks from Collapsed Mind are gone on your side, but they're still on the other side. If you can then slip in, drop in the armor on your side, all of a sudden they're stuck with those rocks on the other side. And even if they skip a turn, maybe they skip the turn next turn, and they're like, well, crap, I just wasted a turn. I think this is going to be an underrated play. I don't think people are fully looking into the power of armor. So I think what I'm trying to get at is, you might want to make sure you take advantage of getting those rocks out ASAP and throwing in an armor. Luckily, it's only a 2-cost card, so you're going to get this out there fast. Keep that on your radar. I'm not seeing many people talk about armor when it comes to this Collapsed Mind. In theory, it sounds like it could be really annoying, and it's almost like, think of it like this. It's almost like a Professor Rex. unless they're running a Patriot deck and they can juice to the power. But still, if you have armor on your side, you can fill in the rest of the cards you need. You have a lot of real estate. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And lastly, for those that are going to be taking advantage of this, so we're talking about the Patriot stuff, we're talking about the She-Hulk, Sunspot, Killmonger, Death. We have one more thing to put in your arsenal, and that's just to ruin everyone's day. It's nothing mind-blowing. It's Leech. Leech is going to be driving people up the wall. So, you know, we talked about all that Death combo. Imagine if you were too slow to play Death. They leech you. You thought you were using that Death on turn 6. Nuh-uh. Not today, not on Leech's watch. If he leeches your Death, you're not going to be playing that card. You're going to lose all that momentum with the destroyed rock. She's not going to be a free card anymore. So, few points. Make sure you're playing the card fast. Don't waste time. When you have Death, you might want to just keep in mind there might be a Leech around the corner, or Shang-Chi, as we talked about. Leech, I think, is going to be very helpful to kind of slow down plays like She-Hulk. Be careful, though. If you might accidentally leech an Infinaut, and when you leech Infinaut, that means they don't have to skip out on turn. They can just clean out play it on turn 6. So a little bit of a drawback to it, but I'm thinking this is kind of what we're looking at for some of the best cards to utilize for the collapse mine. So when you're out there in the Grand Arena Coliseum, you're busting out plays, you're going to wow the odds. Be like, holy cow, why is this guy not an infinite? You're like, you fools, I'm going to be infinite after looking at these top 10 cards that the Emperor Arnold T101 suggested. And taking a look at the likes, looks like you guys deserve a bonus meme time. It's time for bonus meme. I think this is kind of funny. I'm closing in on infinite myself right now. And I did use Sarah Surfer a little bit. I'm kind of bouncing back and forth. You know, I like it, then some days I hate it. Right now, I kind of hate it, but I've been using it to get to level 95 and hopefully closing in on infinity. So I thought this was very applicable to me. We have a meme presented here by Goraman86. I love when this happens. Me, when I'm playing a Surfer deck and the opponent gives me a Green Goblin. Joke's on you. I'm into that. Literally every time I see that, it's like, okay, thanks. I'm just going to turn Green Goblin into a positive power card. So it's a lot of fun. I guess keep that on your radar too. If you're running Sarah Surfer, Green Goblin shouldn't scare you all that much. You can turn that guy into a nice juicy monster. And it's always funny seeing the opponent regret doing that. On that bombshell, thank you so much for stopping by here in the Grand Arena Coliseum. Looking forward to seeing what plays you guys pull off. Let me know if you have any other suggestions down below to help out others. And more importantly, you guys know the drill at this point. It's great to be in the Empire today.